Hey guys, Hades here. All right, today we're going to talk about narration. I've done a live class on point of view, which is part of this, and also I've taken this from my Random 5 in my Random series. So you can find it there also. And in that, you'll also find other stuff. But I thought this was a good little lesson, and we could go ahead and do it. Again, I've taught part of this live, just the point of view part. All right, let's get into it. What does narration mean? What is narrative point of view? What is narrative voice? What is narrative time? And a hint. These are the who, how, and when of storytelling. Narration is basically the telling of the story. In news and academic papers, this is usually standard, and it's going to be, the voice would be probably third person objective. In creative writing or literature, all of these can vary. The narrator the narrator in a song or a poem is the speaker and should not be confused with the writer. For example, if I write a poem and I talk about, I don't know, a girl named Susie, I say she's beautiful, I love her, and everything, don't assume that I, the writer, know anyone named Susie. It's the narrator, it's the speaker of the song or the poem who loves Susie, not necessarily the writer. I mean, it's possible, right? The writer loves someone named Susie, but don't assume that's the case. Okay, writers often take on the persona of someone else, and when they use their narrator doesn't always mean what the writer thinks. Point of view is who tells the story. What is first person? What is second person? Then when we get into third person, there's more than one. What is third person subjective? What is third person objective? What is third person omniscient? In first-person point of view, the story is being told by a character in the story and can be either subjective or objective. The narrator can be the protagonist, main character, or maybe just a minor character witnessing events, right? But it's told in the first person. I did this, I did that, right? Pronouns we use there would be I and we. Second person point of view is not used so often. Yes, I wrote rare. It's maybe not quite rare, but it's still not used very often. You'll mostly see third person, then third person. I'm sorry. You'll see third person, then first person, and sometimes second person. In second person, the narrator is talking to a particular person. Often it's himself or herself, but maybe not necessarily always. Pronouns used are you. Sometimes the person is referring to himself or herself feels like his or her life is out of control. That's why they're talking to themselves in second person. Not always, right? Sometimes you just tell a story, you're talking to you. You do this, you do that. You woke up this morning, and then you slowly went to the bathroom, and you started brushing your teeth. There's always the you in there. So it's not used too terribly often. You'll rarely see it in novels. People like to experiment a little maybe in short stories with second person. In the third person subjective point of view, the writer can get inside the head of one or more characters to give them thoughts, feelings, and opinions that are not acted out or spoken. Pronouns used for this are he, she, it, and they. In this point of view, we cannot see inside all characters. So they might use one person, they might use two or three people. But when they're telling the story, it's third person, right? He does this, she does this, and we can get inside that person's head and know their thoughts and feelings, right? Things they don't say out loud. And maybe just one person in the whole story, maybe just a few people, but it's not everyone. In third person objective point of view, we don't know anyone's thoughts or feelings. Only the action is reported, and we cannot get inside people's minds. Most films and television are basically telling the story in third person objective, right? It's also used for news reports and anything academic where you can't be subjective, right? So if you're telling a third person objective story, we don't know what anyone's thinking. We only see what they do. We only hear what they say. We don't know how they're feeling. We don't know what they're thinking. And then we have third person omniscient. In third person omniscient point of view, the narrator knows all and can get inside everyone's head, and by extension, so can the reader. In this point of view, the narrator is godlike and knows everything about everyone in the story. Right? So third person subjective, we only know about one person or a few people. But third person omniscient, we can learn what everyone's thinking, what everyone's feeling, what they're planning, right? In third person omniscient. So usually, if someone's writing in third person, they're writing third person subjective. They're telling us about one person or a few people. Not often in stories do we hear third person objective or third person omniscient. But it can happen. Narrative voice describes how a story is being told. What is character voice? What is stream of consciousness? What is unreliable voice? What is epistolary voice? Character voice can occur with first and third person voice. It is when one of the characters in the story is telling the story. The character can be minor or major. And if you like Iron Maiden, you'll recognize the picture on this screen. So for example, it could be a minor character. If you've ever read The Great Gatsby, it's told in first person, but it's told from one of the very minor characters, right? Mostly talking about Gatsby. Or the character can be major, right? It could be the only one telling us anything in a story in third person. But that's when a character is relating what's happening. Stream of consciousness voice is an attempt to show how a person thinks. This is usually done in first person, but some people have done it in third person as well. In this type of narration voice, there are often random, incomplete, and irrelevant thoughts happening during the story, right? So, for example, right, there's extra stuff in there because they're trying to show how a real human thinks, right? So it's called stream of consciousness. So let's say the story is about this guy who wants revenge. He wants to beat up someone who beat up his friend. And so he's thinking, okay, I need to kill Eddie. I'm going to go get Eddie. Wow, but I am hungry. Also, that girl looks very pretty, right? They're throwing extra things in how a normal person might think. So it doesn't always follow anything logical. It's called stream of consciousness. Basically trying to replicate what goes on in a person's mind. So it's not always very straightforward. So now we have unreliable voice or unreliable narrator. In a story with unreliable narration, we cannot trust the narrator. The character is crazy, childish, ignorant, unknowledgeable, significantly biased, or is blatantly attempting to lie to the reader. We call that an unreliable narrator. And a good writer won't let you know immediately the narrator's unreliable. Normally, you start reading, you get into the story, you believe the person who's telling you the story. But an example of an unreliable narrator is Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, right? The guy's crazy, and he attacks and kills a guy because he doesn't like his eye. He thinks his eye is evil. And he's telling us the eye is evil, always looking at it, staring at him. And so then he takes the body and he hides it. And the police come over. But he could hear the heartbeat. the guy's dead, so he can't really hear the heartbeat. He's crazy, right? He hears the heartbeat and he ends up giving himself up to the police because he thinks they can hear the heartbeat too, and the heartbeat's telling them that he killed the guy. So he's an unreliable narrator, right? He's telling us all this stuff. The man has an evil eye. Probably doesn't. Probably the eye's not evil. The man's heart keeps beating very loudly after he dies. No, that doesn't happen. We know that doesn't happen, right? So he's an unreliable narrator. He was crazy. But sometimes the unreliable narrator is lying to you, or sometimes the unreliable narrator is very biased. So he's only giving his version, his side of the story, which may not be true or may not be accurate. In epistolary voice, the narration takes place in written correspondence. Traditionally, this voice often employed letters sent between characters or just letters sent from one character. And one character tells the whole story in letters to his brother, his wife, his mother, whoever he's sending letters to. Of course, that was traditionally, right? Today, a contemporary writer can use email, text, or even social networks, social media, right, to tell a story. So it's not just letters anymore, but that would be epistolary. The story is being told by what someone wrote, attempting to communicate with others. That's epistolary. A famous example of that would be Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. It's told through letters. Narrative time is basically the tense in which a story is told. Most stories are told in the past tense about events that have already transpired, already happened. But there are many stories told in the present tense, right? So the story is happening as it's being told. And there's very few stories that are told in future tense because that's a little weird. Again, like second person, you might find some, but it's not very often, right? And that probably won't be a novel. Probably just be some writer experimenting in a short story using future tense. So, like for example, all right, past tense. Jack got out of bed and then he brushed his teeth. In present tense, Jack gets out of bed and brushes his teeth, right? And then future tense, Jack will get out of bed and then he will brush his teeth, right? So most stories are past, but there's a number of them that are told in present and very, very few that are told in future tense. Okay, thought this was funny. You'll see this in my random videos. Just a pug on a pug's face on a chimpanzee's body. All right, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this lesson. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.